Killed right there.
Oh, sorry, somebody the cave rat.
So he's going to drop a rune that you could pick up and upgrade your weapon with. We'll see, that's one of the war chiefs. That was one of the big bosses that just got taken down there. This is actually from the Thursday event that you guys were playing out at our studio. And it looks like that was the war chief, but he's got 3 bodyguards. And this guy right here is actually one that they dominated. The blue there indicates that he's dominated. So this is their guy. He just became the new war chief, and it looks like they're going to probably send him on a mission.
We're going to send him to start mixing things up, because your goal here, and this sort of like lineup of all these different orcs is the hierarchy that you've worked your way through to get to the war chiefs.
Exactly, yeah. And all these guys are dynamic. They're procedurally generated. So these are all the bosses in this area, but you're never going to have the same bosses twice. Like if you play the game a second time, your friend's game 100 times in, they're all going to be different. So in this case, they just they branded one of those bodyguards so that they had a man on the inside that went after his war chief and took him out. So their guy takes over, and now they're sending him off on a riot to start some chaos for them.
All right, so you've set one war chief in action to meddle things up with the other, and now sort of escape to a glowing white tower.
That's right. Back in the open world here, you can fast travel between these towers. This is part of the dual protagonist character we've got. Inhabiting the same body. You've got Talion, the Ranger of the Black Gates, who's killed right at the beginning of the game, but he's not allowed to die. He's brought back from death over and over by Celebrimbor, who's the Wraith inhabiting him, who's actually the elf from the Second Age that forged the Rings of Power with Sauron.
So he's a pretty powerful dude.
Pretty powerful dude.
And he's Groundhog Daying you in like the worst way possible.
Exactly.
That's a verb, by the way.
Or hopefully the best way possible.
The best way possible, perhaps. I mean, maybe for Talion's mental state, it's not super great, but certainly for us, it gives us an awesome chance to romp around this lovely-looking Mordor, and that's one of the more striking things that I think, for me, coming into it right away, I knew you guys were in a different era than sort of what we'd seen in cinema, of course, but Mordor is a very diverse, geographically diverse place.
Yeah, I mean, the point at which in the lore that we're kind of tackling it, Sauron's actually been away from Mordor for thousands of years, so it's had that time to kind of grow back and become a beautiful wild frontier again.
Yeah, it turns out not having like the Lord of all Evil hanging out in you is good for the complexion.
Exactly, so now he's just coming back, just starting to industrialize and rip everything apart again. So we get a little window into the fertile kind of the landscape where he could still feed his armies before he strips it bare.
Where we just tried to do a stealth attack, but it turned out that character was invulnerable to stealth.
That's right.
Is that something you can sort of recon ahead of time, or is that just like going to be a random roll on that enemy and whoops, now you gotta get loud?
If you put the time in to strategize, every boss has a weakness, has some kind of way you can exploit to take him out. So you can grab the other orcs in the world and dominate them and peer into their minds to get the intel on guys and then study their strengths and weaknesses. So it's something that keeps the game fresh too. The fact that these guys are all procedural means they all get different strengths and weaknesses every time you play, and you have different boss fights, and so what you end up here, like, this is the mechanism, right? You go into their mind like that, and then you can find out about some of the other captains and war chiefs. So let's say you're a really excellent stealth player. There's going to be some of these guys that are vulnerable to that.
And I am, Bob. No, definitely not.
But you'll always bump into somebody along the way who's going to challenge that, who's going to be invulnerable to it. And the same was true about combat and ranged and using the beasts. That's another big part of the sandbox. To feed into the systems, they start to play off of each other, and you can create all kinds of crazy, unexpected, emergent moments. That's what's going to be the most fun for us once we launch. It's the same thing that made it fun to work on for years. You get crazy stories that you never thought possible that just keep coming up to surprise you. I can't wait to watch people's stream videos and screenshots.
And see all the shenanigans that ensue. Well, speaking of story, what we're taking a look at now is sort of a section from the story, and part of it that involves a familiar face. Yeah,
so this mission here is the first story mission we've been showing. Give you a little glimpse into what that part of the game is like. Actually, the narrative of the game is non-linear as well. It was written by the lead designer writer on Red Dead Redemption, Christian Canamessa.
Oh, Red Dead, I love that game.
That was a huge win for us to get him on board and work with him on the structure and style. So it's also non-linear like Red Dead, but he has a lot of fun characters to work with, and Gollum is a great one. It's actually very similar to Seth from Red Dead, but he's, at this point in the lore, Gollum's just had the ring stolen from him from the filthy, tricksy Bilbo, and he's off into Mordor in search of it. This is where he ends up in the lore at this time, so that's where we get to cross paths with him. And of course, you're inhabited by the maker of the Rings of Power, so you have this deep connection to the one of the ring bearers, Gollum.
Oh yeah.
So he's kind of leading you around the environments. He's trying to find these artifacts, these heirlooms of Celebrimbor, that when you find them, they sort of jog his memory and help him remember who he was and help him regain his power. So that's the mission we're showing here, is you get following Gollum's tracks, going in and out of the physical world and Wraith world to keep track of him, and then work your way in to try and find one of these artifacts and learn about Celebrimbor.
Okay, and then so coming out of this, by the way, that orc, what would you, is that like a
That's a
troll
Graug. He's a
orc?
massive kind of super predator in Mordor. It's like twice the size of a troll.
A Graud?
Graug.
Graug.
Like Smaug, but with a gur.
Ah. I like
So, that's here. Actually, this is a good example of the ecosystem in action. You got the bait there. It's going to attract some Caragors, who are like big lion, big cat type predators. But of course, that gets his attention too. So he's going to come rushing in and start a fight with them, which gives you the chance to sneak into his cave.
Just jet on by,
Yeah.
because no one wants to run into a Graug, especially on a Graug's home turf.
So you can see the cave here. Like, this is another part of the sandbox. Is you've got the mountains have these cavern systems and caves that you can explore, find collectibles, find crazy beasts in here. So we're gonna sneak through here and eventually probably see him use Wraith World again to track Gollum, and also maybe find some artifacts, pick up some stories from the thousands of years of layered history that have built up in Mordor.
That's in there, yeah. Are these like Grauglings?
So these little guys
little
are
Graug
ghouls.
brood?
Yeah, these guys, if they escape, if you don't get them before they get back into their pits, they'll come back out with a crazy swarm and just overwhelm you. So
A crazy swarm coming out of the walls in a cave. Sounds like my nightmare. But, definitely a neat sort of threat, because there are a lot of diverse threats to you. I mean, from the wildlife to the sort of towering Graugs, all the diverse orcs and all that. There's really a lot of nefarious forces to deal with.
that's right, and on top of the sort of diversity in the wildlife and the basic orcs, the fact that the Nemesis system is like building all these different kind of specific strengths and weaknesses means those orcs are pretty infinitely varied as well, that you've got such a broad array of sort of strengths and weaknesses to deal with, to strategize around.
So this is sort of going between the Wraith world and the not actual world, not Wraith world.
The physical world.
Physical world,
Yeah,
there we
we'll
go.
go with
That allows you to do a little investigation along this storyline. Now, do these branches, this sort of cave here, is this a part that you'll only sort of have access to when you're taking on the story, or will you be able to come back around to this
It's all
place?
open-ended, and we want you to really have the freedom to explore and do this stuff whenever you want. And the story missions take place inside the open world, but of course, there's a lot of other things going on in that space